anything that runs on a server that is between receiving a request and sending out a response is technically middleware. But hold on a moment, because I'm getting way ahead of myself. So what the junk is middleware to begin with? Or if you're from Manchester, what the rubbish? So let's get started by opening up VS Code, and inside of my index.js file I have a basic Express boilerplate. As you can see, I'm requiring Express and listening in on port 3000, and I have two app.get methods, one to /create user and another to /delete user. And down in the terminal I'm using nodemon, so the server can automatically restart whenever I make a change in my code. Now inside of my create user method, I could go ahead and console.log something right above my response.send method, and that line of code would technically be middleware because it's running after it received a request and before it's sending out the response. But generally speaking, to the average Joe who happens to be a programmer, he would not consider this as middleware, and I myself would not consider it middleware neither. So in the world of Express, there's two main kinds of middleware out there. The first is global middleware, and I just said middleware like 50 times, so I apologize for that. So global middleware is nothing more than a function that would run after the server receives any request regardless of its route. So I'll just go ahead and create a function and call it middleware, and this function would have three arguments. The first would be the request, the second would be the response, and the third would be next. Now next is a function, and I'll talk more about what it is in a moment, but inside of the body of the function I'm going to log out to the console mw, and then I'm going to call the next function. Now in order to have this function run globally, I'm going to call the app.use method, which you may have used before, and inside of it I'm going to provide the middleware function. Now if I go and head over to the browser to /create user, I will get logged out to the console mw, and if I go and change the route to delete user, I will get mw logged out to the console again. This function is now middleware that would run after any request comes through to the server. So now let's talk about the arguments that got passed through to the middleware function, and we had the request, the response, and the next function. Now the purpose of having these three arguments is actually pretty useful, because this means I could literally manipulate the request and the response before it even gets through to my app.get methods. And I could even send additional information from my middleware to my get method. So for example, this request argument is actually an object, and I could go ahead and add properties to this object. So I'll just go ahead and type request dot and then just provide a property that I just made up. So that would be request dot something, and I'll set that equal to something else. Now inside of my create user get method, I'll go ahead and do response.send request.something. Now if I go back to the browser, I would no longer get user created, I will get something else. Now before I move on to the next thing, this next method is actually there to signal the middleware, telling it to go on to the next method. Now if I decided to remove this next method, then the /create user or /delete user would not run, and the client would probably stay waiting for a response until it times out. Now I can go ahead and provide a response.send inside of my middleware function, but then again, why would you send a response in your middleware function if you're not going to use the routes that you've created? Now here's the thing, all of this seems to be pretty damn useless. So allow me to introduce you to the problem that middleware fixes so we could know how and when to use it. So the first problem that global middleware solves is passing incoming requests that have a body of JSON. And how you would pass this incoming data is by simply putting app.use express.json. Now if you've seen my Express router videos, then you could go ahead and try and make a post request to a post route and make sure that post request has a body, and you would find it simply just won't work. Now the next thing it might be able to help out with is serving up static assets. You know, the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, etc. So right over here I have a public folder, and inside of it I have an index.html file, and I'll just go ahead and put app.use express.static, and it would accept the path of the public folder as an argument. So I'll just go ahead and paste in there public because it's inside of my project directory. Now if I go to localhost 3000 /index.html, it will give me my HTML file. But that's boring too, right? Maybe we want a little bit of authentication. Now this is going to be a dummy example, so please, oh please, don't build a backend with authentication like this one. Now in the beginning of this video I've created two routes, create user and delete user, and the reason why is because whenever I'm going to create a user, I need to provide information. I don't need to be authenticated as that user to create the account. That just wouldn't make any sense. But if I'm going to delete a specific account, well in that case I would have to be authenticated as that user in order for me to delete it. So I want to provide some kind of authentication to the delete user route and have the create user route not need that authentication. So I will go ahead and create middleware specific for that route. And in order to create middleware middleware for a specific route, you need to understand how these routes run functions. So if you have app.get, app.post, app.whatever it is, it's going to take the first argument, which is the route. And then the second argument would be a function to send out the response. But I could go ahead and add a third function and a fourth function, but the problem is you won't need to have other functions after you sent out the response because it would be pointless. So instead I'm going to provide a function before the response function. And I'll call this function auth for authentication, and now it will run the auth function, and then it will run this anonymous function. So now I'm going to create that auth function, and it will have 3 arguments: the request, the response, and next, and then there will be an if statement inside of that auth function, and the if statement will check if the request.query.signedIn is equal to true. And if it is true, I will call the next function, and because I'm going to call the next function, it would send out a response of user deleted. But what if it is not true? Then in that case, I'll just go ahead and response.send please log in sir inside of my authentication function. Now over in the browser, if I go to /delete user, I will get please log in sir, and if I go ahead and add the query of signed in is equal to true, then it would say user deleted. And that's great because I'm preventing people from accessing my routes. But hold on a moment, we're almost done. There's just one tiny problem here, and that is inside of my terminal, I will get this error and it would say cannot set headers after they are sent to the client. Now what the heck does this mumbo jumbo mean? Well, that's computer speak for saying, hey, you cannot send 2 responses for 1 request. 1 request, 1 response. That's the rule. And that's because once this next function got called and went out to my anonymous function, once the anonymous function completed, it went back to the next function, which is stupid. I did not say to do that. So to prevent that from happening, I'll either put my response.send please log in sir inside an else statement, or I'll just write down return so that it could exit the function once it's been completed, because we don't want it to return. Which now, by the way, when I think about it, return should be the next function and the next function should be called return, but whatever. The point is my error is gone and my code is working perfectly, and now I can end this video peacefully. But hold on a moment before you go, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and on that bombshell, thanks for watching.